Hey guys, it's Father White. Before we share this week's homily, I first want to take this opportunity to thank you for tuning into our podcast. I hope that it provides encouragement and support in your relationship with Jesus. I'd also like to share with you something amazing that's happening at St. Leo. We recently received a $250,000 match opportunity from the Stellar Family Foundation to support our church renovation. Since then, we've received about 1/3 of that in cash and about another third of that in pledges. And our hope is to fundraise the last 1/3 before Christmas. I know that there are so many good causes out there to support because there's so many great things happening in our area through the work of nonprofits. But nonetheless, it would mean so much to me and to our people if you would consider making a pledge to help us meet the match. We are a small parish with a big mission to bridge heaven and earth. You can learn more about how we do that in the links provided in the description. Thank you again, and may God bless you. I was listening to a podcast by David Huberman, who is a neuroscientist who talks a lot about a lot of exercise things, but how it has to do with the brain. Actually, it's more than just exercise. But anyway, the point is, it's a really smart guy with credentials. All right, so David Huberman, look him up. He has a great podcast. You might enjoy it. And one of the things he was pointing out in this particular episode was being goal-oriented. So, all of us grow up, and everybody in our life tells us, focus on the goal, put the goal first, right? And whenever we do something hard, most everybody's great advice they give us is to focus on the goal. But what he was pointing out is that studies are showing that the neurobiology in our brain, when that happens, whenever you are trying to persevere through something hard and all you're thinking about is the goal, your dopamine levels crash. You have no dopamine in you to sustain you. And that's typically why most people, whenever all they do is focus on the goal, they end up getting a little discouraged and burn out, and they don't really stay faithful to the end. What he was pointing out is that the studies are showing that instead, people that focus on the process, on the journey, and they find a way to really enter into that process and really embrace that process, and even, might sound crazy, enjoy the painful process, then what's interesting is that your dopamine levels actually increase, and you have a much higher chance of reaching the goal that you're striving for. So in other words, whenever you're studying, and the only reason you're studying is to pass this test, but you absolutely hate algebra, you just hate it so much, but I'm just got to pass this test, probably going to fail. Sorry to break bad news to you. But, or if you're running a race, and all you're doing is thinking about the finish line, that's just going to be the worst race ever, and maybe you may not get a good score. Or if you're trying to exercise, go to the gym every day because you want to lose weight, and you're just thinking about those pounds that are going to just come off, and then And you'll just probably stop going to the gym after a little while. But if you learn to like the gym and you start to embrace the gym life, or if you learn to actually enjoy the process of studying and the process of learning, you're definitely going to reach your goals that you have if you learn how to enjoy the process. I want to kind of put this in a little example for you in my own life. Back in April, I ran a half marathon for the first time. I've always loved running, and it's always been something that I've enjoyed, but I never did a half marathon. So something I always wanted to do, and I finally found one, and because a cousin of mine invited me, and so he signed up, and I said, okay, I'll just sign up with you. Well, I should have known, red flag number one, is that it was on a Monday. Yeah, who does marathons on a Monday? Well, that was already the first red flag. Red flag number two, it was in Winsboro, Louisiana. I don't know if you know where that is, but you don't need to know because it's in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, so it was like a 2.5-hour drive and literally the middle of nowhere. And we finally got there, late on Sunday night. We got a little hotel. That's a whole nother story. That was not a hotel. Anyway, it was like a scary movie. Anyway, so we stayed there. We woke up in the morning and we ran this. And so we show up and, okay, it's like these people that live in vans and they walk marathons and they do one every day in different states. And so we showed up and there was a few people running, us included, but our start time was after the people that were already walking. So we show up and people are already walking. It's what is going on? And I'm used to races like with a big old start line, like finish line, and there's like a crowd that's all happy, everybody's excited. Well, this was just like, we're in like the middle of like a park, and we're doing like laps. And you had to do like 8 big old laps. And okay, whatever, it's my first half marathon, let me just do it. So we did it, and it was something, and it was fun to like finish the race, but I didn't quite get the time that I really wanted. But, you don't need to know about that. So, anyway, this morning I got to my opportunity to run my second half marathon. And this time it was in Broussard, just down the street, and a totally different experience. So, before I came to St. Leo, I was in Broussard for a while. So, first of all, a bunch of familiar faces. That was really cool. Second of all, they had the finish line thing. I was like, well, there's my finish line. Y'all, it was so sad. The first half marathon, I like finished, and like nobody's cheering. There's like, hello, and everybody, like, did y'all just realize that I just like killed myself for this? But anyway, so but this time there's a finish line. That was check number 2, and then we're traveling all around the city of, town, whatever it is, Broussard, and as I'm running, I really wanted to like put this Huberman principle in my mind. So I told myself, okay, I definitely want to get a faster time, but I'm not going to think about the finish line while I'm running. I'm going to just like enjoy this race and focus. I'm not going to zone out. I'm going to focus and enjoy every moment of this. So I'm running around Broussard, and what was cool, there was like people in their like front lawns because it's Broussard, and there was people, and like I knew them. They like used to go to my church, so like I was just like waving. It's like I was in a parade, y'all. Like I'm like running, like, hey, I know you. They're like, hey, Father White. So people must have thought everyone else running was like, what is up with this dude? Anyway, but it was so fun, and the last 2 miles were, I gotta admit, pretty tough, because I found myself all of a sudden there was like no one in sight, like no one in front, no one in back. Like as you start to run, like people spread out. So I'm like, all right, this is getting a little tough, and I noticed my mind started to zone out. Like I was ready to just zone out and just like not even. And very quickly, I thought about David Huberman, and I said, okay, I got to focus. So I started smiling. I'm like running, and I'm smiling. It's like, and people, the police officers like directing traffic must have thought I was crazy. Like, why is this dude on something? But anyway, like smiling, and it's amazing. Like all of a sudden, there's like this more energy. Like when I focus and smile, and like, and it brought me to the end. Well, I ran this race 12 minutes faster than in April, and I trained less for it. Isn't that interesting? It's like just like the psychology of whenever we embrace the suffering, we actually meet our goal to a greater degree. All right, but the problem is we hate suffering, and I don't care who you are, we all hate it, and it's just human nature. We flee suffering at all cost in our life. It's just like it's coming, and it's like run away, like shove it away. We don't want it. Well, the problem is it's unavoidable. Suffering is touching all of us throughout our life in different ways, and we have different stories, but none of us are exempt, and we all have it. And we've been wrestling with this question of suffering forever, since the beginning of human time. In today's gospel, Jesus talks a little bit about suffering, and it's amazing how tone deaf the apostles are. They just like don't hear it. Like Jesus says it, and they just don't hear it. They just don't get it. And so in case you were zoning out while we read the gospel, I'll give you a quick recap. So Jesus tells them, the Son of Man, that's him, must suffer greatly. Very clearly, he says he must suffer greatly and be killed and rise 3 days later. He tells them just straightforward, gives it to him. And Peter pulls him off to the side and starts to kind of rebuke him, because Jesus is supposed to be the Messiah. He's supposed to be like this great, military king that comes and overthrows our enemies. So why would we be talking about suffering and defeat? That sounds like failure. So Peter's kind of giving him a pet talk. Maybe Jesus is depressed. Who knows? So he's trying to encourage him. And Jesus' great words, "Get behind me, Satan. You're not thinking like God does. You're thinking like men do." For those of you that are fans of the season, The Chosen, they really portray this so well in season 4. Jesus, they go through this whole little gospel here, And it's like, as Jesus tells him, like, I have to suffer and I have to die. And they're just like looking at him like a deer in the headlights. And they're all just kind of like confused, like afraid to ask. Like they just don't get it. They refuse to understand it. And isn't that just so relatable? Don't we do the same? We just refuse to understand the mystery of suffering. But anyway, Jesus tells him he has to suffer and die. And then what we know now is Jesus entered freely into his passion and transformed suffering into redemptive love. St. John Paul II wrote a apostolic letter, or maybe it was an encyclical. Anyway, one of those Pope document things. It's called Salvifici Doloris, which means on human suffering. And he talks all about the mystery of suffering, and these are not his own insights. This is pulling from the tradition of the church, but he does say it, kind of in a new poetic way. I highly recommend it. It's online. You can just type in "on human suffering, John Paul II," and it'll come up. Anyway, there's a lot of awesome insights, but one insight in particular I want to share with you today is that he reminds us and points out that when Jesus died on the cross, he opened up suffering for all human suffering to enter in. In other words, like his redemptive suffering has been opened up for all of us to now participate in it. And just as we participate in his suffering, we too can now participate in the life-giving love that comes from redemptive suffering. Now, this is the thing that we refuse to understand and accept. But nonetheless, whenever we do experience it, when we do choose to unite our sufferings with Christ, notice how transformative it is in your life and in others. It's almost kind of like spiritual cash. It's just the mystery of grace. It only makes sense because of the cross. This great mystery of redemptive suffering, that whatever we're suffering with, whenever we choose to unite it to Jesus, it's like an act of the will. It's like, Jesus, I give this suffering to you for so-and-so. It's like, it has meaning and it has effectiveness for someone else that we're praying for. I say spiritual cash. Think about it. People that you love. Is there someone in your life that you love a lot? Hopefully the answer is yes. Hopefully there's a lot of people in your life that you really, really love, that you really care about. Hopefully your family, maybe some friends, people that you really, really love. Typically people that you love, you give them your money. I mean, think about it, like Christmas, like you buy them gifts, right? You give them your money, all right? This is like spiritual cash. If you love them, it's like, I can give you something. I can give you the merits of grace when I apply my suffering in union with Christ for your sake. We can use that. I want to go back to the apostles. The apostles, they really highlight this well in season 4 of The Chosen, to give that shout out again. They wrestle a lot with suffering, and they wonder why are they suffering while everyone else is being healed? Like, Jesus is this like great miracle worker, raising the dead and healing the blind and, curing the sick and exorcising demons, and yet the apostles are suffering and they don't get it. They're getting frustrated. They're getting resentful. Like, why, Lord? Why are you healing them and not us? Why are we the ones that have to suffer? It's just so beautiful. Like, they portray this so well in season 4. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. And what they're building up to is the answer is because Jesus is preparing them for his passion. He's preparing them to endure to the end. We also know most of them don't endure to the end. And not only that, he's preparing them for, after the resurrection, to evangelize in a world that doesn't want to hear it. That's scary and that's hard, and that involves a lot of suffering. Evangelization will make you suffer if you're serious about it. So it's mysterious, isn't it? How like Christ permits that suffering in order to like prepare them and purify them and strengthen them for the work of God, for the work of evangelization, to teach them to strip themselves of their own comforts and attachments and to be ready to pour themselves out in love. That's what suffering teaches us, but we refuse to accept it because we'd rather be comfortable. Is there someone in your life that you love? Will you use your suffering for them? Will you use it or will you lose it? Next time you have that headache or the cold or you get injured or you're sick, what if we were to say, Jesus, I give this to you for so-and-so. Next time you're anxious or you're depressed or you're lonely, what if we said, Jesus, I give you all that interior emotional suffering for so-and-so. I apply this and unite this to your cross and I give it to so-and-so. The spiritual cash. Or will we just lose it? Instead, usually we just numb the pain. We search for sin because at least sin is fun and at least it feels better. We just throw the money, the spiritual cash, down the toilet. But what if we embraced it, applied it to Jesus, united it with him, and applied it to someone that we love? That is the transformative power of Christ. That is the way of the Christian. That is how, for centuries, the church has evangelized. Not by being nice, but by suffering well. That is how we change the world. It's so hard. And let me be clear, I'm not talking about like whenever people cross boundaries. Like sometimes we need to just put up some boundaries. That's a different homily, but we need to wrap this up. But like the sufferings that we can't control, that's what I'm talking about. The sufferings that come and we just can't really do a whole lot about it. What if we chose to unite it to Jesus? That will make us more like Christ, and others will benefit too. So today we pray for that grace, for that courage, and that strength. Amen.